Mrs. Singleton, Helen Singleton?
Yes.
Do you go to school or work? Where do you live?
I live in Westwood. I'm a student at Santa Monica City College. I'm an art major.
How old are you, let me ask?
I'm 28.
Well, the question we usually get, and the one Eric wants us to answer most, is what motivated us, or what motivated me as an individual to go to Mississippi?
The campus around the University of California in Los Angeles, there was a lot of covert discrimination. I took over the NAACP because they weren't doing anything about it.
And in order to make the trip by car down to the southern part of Virginia, which is Lawrenceville, Virginia, it's only 17 miles north of North Carolina. But in order to get there, you couldn't stop anywhere on the way to eat. You couldn't go into town and shop except on Tuesdays or something like that.
I organized them to go down and start picketing those places which wouldn't let us work.
You couldn't sit here, you couldn't go there, you had to go to this ticket, the black ticket window to get a ticket.
Wouldn't let us live in the apartments, wouldn't let us, we were just discriminated against all over the place. We couldn't get haircuts in the neighborhood, for example.
I sort of decided that the United States was where I was born, and that was my country, and I was going to do something, if I could, to make it live up to the full measure of its Constitution and its creed.
Do you think you'll be one of those people Mr. Rogers talked about who may go all the way to New Orleans without really knowing why the ride is being taken, but once you get there, we'll know for sure?
Well, as it stands now, I know why I'm going. I suppose that when I do finally get there, it will really be more concrete to me.
You know why? Could you put it into a few words for us?
A few words, yes. First of all, being a Negro, I don't see how I could justify not going.
So there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to go. So we were certain, I was certain about what I wanted to do, and because I'd had all these experiences, and I just wanted to help out and do something about it. The whole idea of interstate travel was, I didn't know what to call it back in those days, but it was something I had experienced, and experienced the segregation in the process. By the time the Freedom Ride opportunity came along in 1961, I was mentally prepared to go and do something about this if I could.
I wonder, Helen, if we could bring in your husband now, Bob Singleton. He's, as I understand it, vice chairman of CORE for Santa Monica and Venice.
Yes.
Bob, could you join us for just a moment? You're going to be the leader of this particular ride?
Yes, I will.
Do you know yet how many people will be making the trip with you?
There's approximately 20 that will be going with us.
The Freedom Rides gave us a chance to go down to the belly of the beast. And I started organizing right away, starting to get people signed up to go. We had 42 people to go from UCLA at one time. A lot of people backed down before we left.
The Freedom Rides are sponsored by the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE. CORE works to erase the color line through direct, nonviolent action, sit-ins, stand-ins, and boycotts. The City at Night remote unit covered a CORE training session at the Price Chapel Church on 43rd Street in Los Angeles, just a few blocks from Wrigley Field.
The Freedom Rides were started by CORE in May of this year, specifically, I think, for two purposes. One, to test the Boynton decision of 1960, which was handed down by the Supreme Court, which said that Negroes have a right to eat in those bus stations, terminals, air terminals, and train stations that fall under the jurisdiction of the interstate commerce laws. And secondly, there is a real basic reason for the Freedom Rides, and that is the moral principle upon which we are founding them. And that is that individuals, regardless of race, creed, or color, have a right to travel, have a right to be treated as any other American, regardless of their origin. When you go into Parchment, Mississippi prison, what you do, what you say, will have a direct reflect upon the whole movement, upon what we're trying to do, upon the struggle from California to Florida and all points in between. You are to act as emissaries of public relations to your jailers. If they curse you, if they hit you, if they kick you, you are to take this. You're not to say anything back to them, but you are to attempt to win them over by acts of goodwill. And as Martin Luther King said, it is your task to overwhelm them with your capacity to suffer.
We were following, as Martin Luther King also followed, the notion of nonviolent activism, which originated with Mahatma Gandhi. The whole idea is to resist nonviolently. You also train the people who are going to be involved in this nonviolent participation. And that took place in the form of sociodramas, in which we would role play really as realistically as possible, so that you could get a feeling for how to protect yourself, how to behave nonviolently when you are accosted or approached or confronted with violent acts.
Well, not you. These folks are supposed to be. You're not supposed to be. You don't belong here. You know that. Why don't you niggas go back where you came from? You don't belong around here. This one's kind of good looking now. Isn't she now? Look at that. Her hair all nice and pretty. A big bauble in the rear. Do you think this boy's glasses are worth much? I don't know. Think they're breakable? Can't see too much of them. Here, let me see if they'll break. Thank God they did. Pretty shoddy stuff, they make up noise.
This nonviolent training we had, which I was willing to practice nonviolence as a tactic, but I was certainly not going to stand there if someone reached out at my wife. So I tried to talk her out of going. And of course, you can see that I failed.
Mahatma Gandhi also had something that's called inner freedom, in which you sort of free yourself up on the inside so that you can participate with a free mind and not respond violently to violence.
Hey, this must be Cinderella. She's got a golden slipper. Well, isn't that cute? You ever seen of us come up north, cause trouble for you kids? They want coffee. They don't want coffee. There's reds. But how can you be red and black, too? That's what I want to figure out.
And you really do call on that when you are afraid, because you've been freed up on the inside, and you know that, or at least you try to feel that whatever they do to you, they're the ones with the problem.
Come down here, we'll show you hospitality. That's all it takes. Hey! What are you trying to stop? Huh? Hey, what are you? You see him hit you? I saw that. What are you hitting him for? Huh? What are you coming at him for? Trouble? Is that what you want? Trouble? Is that what you want? You don't take two of us to take one of these yankees.
When the first violence occurred, that was not a reason to stop doing it, because then violence would have won.
All of the civil rights groups met and decided that if they called the rides off, it was going to wind up just like the 1947 situation, and that the means segregation won again, and the federal government was unable to enforce its laws in the southern states. As a result of that meeting, they all decided they would continue the freedom rides.
How do you feel about the violent defenders of segregation? Do you hate them? Do you have contempt for them?
No, certainly not. First of all, I wouldn't bother to waste an emotion like hate on anybody. Hate can be deteriorating physically, I think. And I don't waste any love on them, but hate, I certainly don't hate them.
The freedom rides were not just to get white people to sit next to black people or even just to use the same facilities. This was the United States, and we had a Constitution which says that all men are created equal In my mind, I needed to help this country to be what it was supposed to be.
Do you suppose that when you get down there this time, because of all the unfavorable publicity, unfavorable from the Southern point of view, that your group is likely to get rougher treatment, perhaps longer jail terms, or more pushing around from the guards than the earlier groups?
Well, the way I look at it, the more drastic the treatment becomes, I think the closer to the brink they are.
We had Bobby Kennedy, #1 as Attorney General. And his brother, John, was a little upset that we were making the United States look so bad.
Photographs of that bus burning were on front pages of newspapers around the world. And Kennedy was about to have a meeting with Khrushchev. And he did not have the moral authority if he was allowing this kind of treatment of his own citizens. He couldn't hardly tell Khrushchev how to treat his.
If we can force them to take a very, very drastic move, then perhaps the President will take a stand, or the Attorney General will find it necessary to be a little more positive about doing something.
Now, I might add that while you're on the train, remember that you are to get to Jackson. That's where we want to get you to Parchment. Don't do any testing or anything along the way. Don't get put in jail before you get to Mississippi. We want you in the Mississippi jail first. We'll hit the others later. But now we're going to go to Mississippi. So don't do any eating in the bus stations or what have you along the way. Get to Mississippi. That's the important.
We got on a train to go to Jackson, Mississippi. And on that train, there was no segregation. When we got off, the facilities were segregated in Jackson. We were told to go, the white people were told to go to the colored only, and the black people were supposed to go to the white only. Or if we went anywhere together, we'd go together and integrate the counters.
We went directly into what we spotted immediately as the white waiting room, because the sign was still there, and sat down as a group. And the chief of police asked us to leave. He said, "Are y'all going to move?" And we didn't move. So
he said it 3 times.
He said it 3 times, and after that, we were arrested.
Leons, the Singletons, and the 12 others who made the trip are now in jail. Film coverage of their arrest in a moment. This is the destination of the Freedom Riders, the railroad station in Jackson, Mississippi. The events that followed the arrival of their train from New Orleans may have seemed anticlimactic after all the preparations. The 15 Californians, 10 whites, 5 Negroes, got off the train and went downstairs into the terminal. They sat down as a group in the white waiting room. Police Captain J.L. Ray went up to each one and told him to move on. He then asked if they understood his order. When they refused to leave, he placed them all under arrest. Then a police escort to the paddy wagon and off to jail. That's all there was to it. It was all over in a matter of minutes.
I remember that we saw the mob. They knew we were coming, and there was a lot of them. And when the paddy wagons, we were told to get directly into the paddy wagon. I was glad to get in the paddy wagons.
We were taken out to the paddy wagon and sitting in the hot sun. This was July in Mississippi. We were pushed into the paddy wagon, and the door slammed, and that's when we realized, you're in here.
The next day, they were tried, convicted, and each was sentenced to 6 months and $200 fine. Last week, they were transferred to the Mississippi State Prison at Parchment.
I didn't get my awakening until the doors closed at Parchment Penitentiary. That clanging shut of these electric doors, they didn't even use keys anymore. That's when I woke up and said, are those doors going to ever open again? But it gave you a chance to really think about your life, or what got you to that point, and what you were going to do when this was over, if it was ever over.
Corps plans to bail them out after 39 days, getting them home in time for the start of the fall semester. Friends of the Freedom Riders and their critics can probably agree on one thing: the youngsters possess uncommon courage and dignity.